Greetings. My name is Dr. Waddell Brooks Sr., your host, and this is Community Focus. We're very fortunate this morning to have a distinguished guest, Al Rogers. He's a native of Zion, Illinois, a former security director, Waukegan Public Schools. He manages the B.J. Gaston Bethesda Village. One-time coach, Waukegan High School Bulldogs basketball team. Mr. Rogers recently announced that he is a Democratic candidate for the 61st District State Representative. Good morning, Mr. Rogers.
Good morning, Dr. Brooks, and thank you for the opportunity to visit with you this morning.
Thank you very much for taking time from your very busy schedule to be with us. Lake County is approximately, 800,000 people, and of course, I don't know how many up at 5 o'clock this morning listening to the program, but I understand we have a pretty good audience, right, Chris?
That's right.
Yeah, okay. Chris is the program director here at production director here at 102.3 FM and FM, AM. Mr. Rogers, I'd like for you to tell our listening audience, first of all, a little bit about your personal and professional background.
Well, like you just said, I spent the first 28 years of my professional career working for Waukegan Public Schools, and then transitioning out of that, we started our own non-for-profit organization, the United Youth Academy, for teens aging out of foster care, homeless teen aging out of foster care, and due to some severe budget cuts from the state, we've had to move in another direction. And at that time, Dr. Gaston, who at that point was the pastor of Mount Zion Church, asked me to take over as the managing partner for the B.J. Gaston Bethesda Village there in Zion, a 40-unit senior citizens property, and that's what we do now.
Well, you mentioned that you was active at the Waukegan Public Schools, but tell us your activity there.
Basically, I oversaw the security for the entire school district, both staff and students, as well as coached basketball and some football in my earlier years. And, you know, I always tell everyone it's always a great day to be a Bulldog. Waukegan gave me 28 or 25 years of some very good living.
Very good. Well, you are also a community activist. I can identify with you because I'm a community activist in Lake County myself, and you've been real active in the past few years. But tell us about your activity, in the community. Yeah.
You know, I like to now talk about it as more as a community organizer, as the president would say.
You started out, yeah.
Correct. You know, but that being said, a great deal of is about social justice, making sure that things run the way they should run, and those that are responsible for making sure they are held to a level of accountability. And so we've spent a great deal of our personal time there in the community, working with different agencies, helping everyone get on board to make sure that everyone has a fair shot at the table.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, we're talking with Mr. Al Rogers, native of Zion, Illinois, and he just mentioned about being active in the community, being part of the Waukegan public school system for over 25 years, one-time coach of the Waukegan High School Bulldogs basketball team. I remember the great teams on the Waukegan Bulldogs. I'm not sure whether you were there when they played North Chicago, when let's see. No, that's the regional tournament where Rufus Woods made the shot that's still been talked about. I don't know when that was, about 19.
Trust me, I wasn't there then.
And then when Waukegan played Warren a few years ago, it was a great shot from midcourt by another young man that beat Warren too.
Sure, it was Jeremy Richmond.
Yes. So it's been some
Jeremy
great.
went on and played at University of Illinois. But the neat thing is the kid Brandon Paul from Warren that year. Mm-hmm. Both of those kids represented Lake County well, along with Lenzel Smith and some others that have really done.
Lenzel Smith from Zion.
From Zion,
yeah. Ohio State.
Ohio State. We had Ben Bress, a kid from Antioch, or a kid from Mundelein up at University of Wisconsin. So we've had some very productive kids represent Lake County well at the collegiate level after their prep days were over.
And you were a former security director at Waukegan Public Schools too. So besides coaching, you got a chance to know the kids very well.
You do. Working with Waukegan School District over the years allowed me to gain a great degree of experience and necessary in working with young adults and working with staff just to see the global and school safety has changed so much over the years, and it's a tragedy today that we have to even talk about school safety in the terms that we do today, because when I first started, it was moms and grandmas and patrolling the halls, and you didn't have the type of violence that we see all across America today in schools. And it's frustrating and alarming that, because schools, I still believe, are the safest place in America for students to be, but yet we have to take some serious precautions to ensure, in light of the first major shooting, the Columbine, and everything that has happened since then. It's just unfortunate that school violence has risen to the level that it has now.
And it's not just one area, like you think about it, maybe the low-income area, but it's in the high-income areas too. School
violence now, there was a time that, you thought of school violence and it was only in the urban communities, but today school violence has no respect of person. You're seeing it hit in all aspects, all socioeconomic areas of the country. And again, that's just unfortunate.
Well, again, too, another thing, you served as the Zion Elementary School District School Board for 8 years, and I guess 3 of those years were vice president. So you've been very active in the school.
Again, education is what is needed, and again, I was blessed to have the opportunity to work for the public schools in Waukegan, and then blessed again to serve in my hometown of Zion on the Board of Education to give some direction and guidance to the students there. And that was probably one of the most rewarding times when we started my journey. My first 2 years I was appointed and then ran for election. And during that time when I ran, I think when I was elected, the board was somewhat dysfunctional, and we went out and hired a superintendent. You may know Dr. Connie Collins,
yes,
who is now the superintendent out in Round Lake. But when we brought Dr. Collins into Zion, I thought had a somewhat dysfunctional board, just coming off of a strike, and just a lot of turmoil. But yet, under her guidance and leadership, she was able to bring us together as she left, and we were singing Kumbaya. From a board being dysfunctional to 4 years later singing Kumbaya, I thought was a great attest to her leadership and ability.
Yes, because she's from Gary, and she left here and went to, was it Oak Park?
Yeah, she went to Oak Park. She did a stunt over there in Oak Park and did a nice job. And then Round Lake saw her talents and hired her. And that was, I believe, based coming off of their state takeover. I think she was the first superintendent from the takeover. Right. And I understand she's doing a very good job out in that area.
Now we're going from education to politics. Now, I understand you recently announced that you're a Democratic a candidate for the 61st District State Representative. And I have to give my producer of this program credit. Clyde McLemore is the producer of this show, and I want to thank him. I can't leave the program without thanking him for your appearance here. But tell us about what piqued your interest in being a candidate for state representative.
Well, the 61st District, if 4 years ago I would have never even thought about running for this particular seat.
Okay.
But due to the recent redistricting, it kind of brought it into a situation that I think a Democrat has a strong possibility to win. Under the redistricting, it just looks like a time that a Democrat can take the seat and begin to move this district forward.
Now, you mentioned about redistricting, but what area does the 61st District encompass?
Right now, I believe it encompasses Zion, Beach Park, parts of Waukegan, parts of Gurnee, all of Winter Harbor, Old Mill Creek, parts of Lake Villa, Lindenhurst, Antioch, and those areas there.
That's a huge area for you to cover, too, right?
It's a big area. It's not big as it used to be because, before we had parts of Round Lake Beach and those areas. So it's winnable now, I guess, for a Democrat, I believe. This
is fantastic. Well, we know what area it covers, but what are your platform? What do you expect to accomplish?
Again, as a freshman legislator, not much. I understand that there's going to be a learning curve for any freshman legislator to go down to Springfield. So I don't go in with any high expectations on changing the world tomorrow. But there are some things that I'm greatly concerned. Property tax reform is at the top of that list.
Okay.
How we fund education in the state of Illinois has to change. And then finally, I think we have to do a better job in legislating prison reform. I think the state is spending entirely way too much money on incarceration of low-level offenses when we can turn them back into community-based programs or community-based rehabilitation programs instead of incarcerating at $130, $140 a day.
Oh, that's fantastic, and probably more for federal imprisonment, too.
Correct. Again, I'm going to stay in my lane. I'm going to leave the feds alone.
But it costs more.
I'm sure it does cost more. But, when we look at, Illinois is facing a pension deficit. Yeah. I just think if we really look at how the amount of money we're spending on incarceration, I think we can really begin to move those dollars into some much needed areas. Not saying that I'm soft on crime, because I'm not, but I am a realist that low level offenses, I believe prison was designed to punish hardened criminals.
Okay.
And I would willing to bet, I think I read the other day, 70% of those incarcerated in Illinois are incarcerated on low-level drug offenses, whether that's use or possession. And we have to do a better job.
Well, we have Terry Link from North Chicago there, and he's a Senator Terry Link, one of the most powerful finance committees down there. Then we had Rita Mayfield. She's from the 6th District, I guess, and she was appointed, I guess, as a result of the death of Eddie Washington, that she got reelected on her own rights. But she's very active down there, too. Now, you mentioned about property tax reform. Is there inequity among the property tax?
I'm not sure there's an inequity amongst it, but I think when you look at Lake County or certain areas of Lake County, Zion specifically has one of the highest property tax rates in the entire county. Something's wrong with that equation. and we have to really dig deep and look at. And I'm willing to bet that just about every homeowner in the 61st district has some real issues as to their tax base and the tax levy in their area.
You mentioned about inequity in school funding for education. We look at areas like city of North Chicago, and I think it's about $6,000, I think, to educate a child, whereas the neighbors just south spending about $15,000 to $17,000 per student, per child. Something wrong with that picture, but I mention that because State Senator Link told me that if a bill comes before the House or the Senate pertaining to education, it never gets out of committee. But if a bill comes pertaining to prisons, no discussion. It's so something wrong with that.
And Dr. Brooks, that's it in a nutshell. I mean, we can talk until we're blue in the face. We're building more prisons than we're building more schools.
Okay.
And like you said, it's an injustice that a child in North Chicago and a child in Lake Forest is not receiving the same quality of education based on property tax and how schools are funded. The child in Lake Forest, the student in Lake Forest should receive the same caliber and same quality of education, and funding should not be the deciding factor as to the level of education that a student receives. And so we have to do something. And again, you mentioned it. The bill never comes out on education, but
no discussion on the prison.
On prisons, we're going. Everybody's tough on crime, and I get it.
We mention this because the education inequity, because the city of North Chicago is one example. It may be St. Louis or Round Lake or whatever, but they cannot get the money to get the equipment to compete on the same level as the higher income area.
And that, again, I can't beat that horse enough. It's the inequity in funding of education has to change because today's student is such a global. We're living in such a global society. Technology is changing day to day by day by day, and if a student in Zion or in an urban area doesn't have the same equipment and technology to be ready for the global society that they're going to graduate into, we're doing that student a disservice. We're doing that parent a disservice. We're doing that community a disservice. And so, again, we have to find an equitable way to fund education for all students.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, the exemplary person that you listen to is Mr. Al Rogers, the native of Zion, Illinois, and an educator, and he's just recently announced his Democratic candidacy for 61st District State Representative. The message he's been telling us about that we'll be going to, oh my goodness, Winthrop Harbor, Zion, Newport Township, Wadsworth, Old Mill Creek, part of Gurnee, Antioch, Lake Villa, and Lindenhurst. Mr. Rogers, that's going to take you away from home for many nights, or days.
When we decided to do this, sat down with my wife and said, this is what I'm thinking about doing. And she looked at me and with a very strange look and said, well, if this is what you want to do, we're on board. It is a big district, but it's a district that, and again, this is not, it's State Rep Joanne Osmond, who is currently the rep, has decided not to run. And so it's an open seat. And the question is always asked, can a Democrat win this seat? I believe we can. I believe, again, with the redistricting, I think with the demographics that have moved out to the western areas of Lake County, I think it is a great opportunity for the Democrats to take this seat.
And another advantage, too, is that you're not running against an incumbent.
Right. That's correct.
That's the key.
And again, it would have been tough, and I'm not sure I would have jumped in it if the incumbent was running. But when State Rep Osmond decided that she was not, and announced early that she was not going to run, we started looking at it, and started looking away from it. Eventually decided that this is the path that we're ready to take.
Well, how about a family now? You have children that are grown?
I have 3 adult children.
Okay.
I actually have 5 children,
Okay.
3 biological children, and 2 children that we just decided to take as our own.
Okay.
All college graduates.
I
have a student. My oldest son is an administrator with the Zion School District, and I have a student who teaches up in Kenosha. Our athlete middle child is down in Atlanta. Doing some work, we still don't know what, but long as we're not. And our daughter now just completed her last year of college and is out looking to find her way. And so the kids are grown, and it's the wife and I, and she probably wants me out the house.
Well, tell us about you involved with young adults, and now you're involved with seniors.
The
whole gambit there.
I laugh. I tell everyone. The first half of my professional career, I dealt with young adults, and now I deal with seniors. And believe it or not, they both have a certain degree of needs.
You're right.
Their needs are not the same, but they both have a certain degree of common needs
right.
and a need for attention. And the seniors that I work with now are just a great group. It's a 40-unit senior citizens building.
Okay.
And we're at full capacity and with a waiting list. So
wow,
we're doing something right up at Bethesda Village.
Right. Tell us about another venture you had, a 2008, I guess, United Youth Academy.
With some great degree of help from a young lady that I know you know very well, Dr. Daisy Brooks.
Okay.
Who was a strong supporter and mentor of mine.
Okay.
When we decided to venture into that program. And it was, the United Youth Academy was a transitional living facility for young men aging out of foster care.
Mm-hmm.
Many of these young men have been broken because they were bounced, and I don't have to tell you, you guys know.
Oh, yes.
Bounced from foster care to foster care to foster care.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time they no one wants to take the young adult, child aging out of foster care. So it was from 13 to 21. Most of them were just floating, trying to find and so we were, through the help of then State Rep Eddie Washington, received some funding to get us up and get the doors open. And then shortly thereafter, there was just massive cuts in social programs, and ours was one of the ones that were hit hard by that. And so we had to put it on the back burner.
Okay.
But yet there's still a great need in Illinois for young men aging out of foster care, and it's a great passion of mine because, like I said, these kids have been bounced and they're broke. Mm-hmm. Now, by the time they get to be 16, 17 years old, they have a very low self-esteem, and then they become a victim of a system, and then now they're in and out of incarceration. And so our job was to try to get them on some firm foundation and to work with them so they would transition back into society to be productive. And while our doors were open, we did well. But again, the recession and the economy took a tank, and so did our program.
You mentioned about Dr. Daisy Brooks. We could talk a whole program about her. She had her motto was to save them all.
That's
but it's difficult to save them all. They came to her from the state. Like you mentioned, up to 18 years old and without maybe 4th or 5th grade education.
Right.
Because they've been bouncing around. They didn't have time to get in one place. So now she has, because of funding, she suffered there, but she has a last year a contract with the school district for 60 alternative the school the youngsters. And she's graduating those.
One of the things, and like she was as instrumental. She was like a library for me, and I was like a sponge. So when I would go in and say, she would give me all the pitfalls, but never once did she say, "No, you can't do it."
Okay.
Not a single time when we were in the infant stage of, I would go and sit with her for hours, and not a single time did she ever say, "I'm too busy." Not a single time did she say, "No, you know." Every time I came to sit with her, she gave me just a wealth of knowledge and information, and all she gave us we put to use. And again, it was too bad that the funding, because I know she was going through some of the same funding crisis and she was a 20-year program.
Okay,
we were a baby program. She was a 20-year program, but I know the work that she's done. I know the work she is doing and continues to do. I know at least with the alternative school. With the North Chicago School District. So again, it's just an extension of what God has placed in our hands to do, and that's working with at youth risk.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know we're talking to Mr. Al Rogers about his goals, objectives, and so forth, since he has recently announced his Democratic candidacy for the 61st District State Representative. But we just mentioned Dr. Daisy Brooks. She's working in some of the same programs he formerly worked in. But to get more information about Dr. Daisy Brooks, go to communityforumonline.com. And you will see the President Barack Obama giving her an award, the 2010 Citizens Medal. Or you can go to drbrooks.tv and you can watch the ceremony. It's about a 20-minute ceremony. Of course, she's been involved with Oprah Winfrey, has given her on her show $100,000 on her show, and many other awards. So we have to give it to her for 39 years in the business. But we had to bring an exemplary person with you this morning, Mr. Al Rogers, in his efforts to try to get property tax reform, equity and funding for education, cost-effective sentencing, and prison reform. Mr. Rogers, do you have any time for leisure time activities?
I'm a golfer, Doc. Now that I'm on the campaign, my golf buddies are calling and I'm saying I can't go out, but I'm a golfer, love to golf. When the kids were small, we did a lot of camping, a lot of family activities and things of that nature. But basically, it's either golf or watching the NFL.
Yeah. Your wife, has she retired too?
No. Debbie is an educator, an early childhood educator for the Lake Forest School District, and has been, I think, for the last 15 years there. Prior to that, she was site director for the Lake County Head Start, or not site director, the director for Lake County Head Start.
Wow. Well, sometime in the future, we'd like to get you and your wife, you both are educators and role models here in Zion at Lake County, really, on Community Forum that airs at 7 o'clock every Thursday night on Channel 17. So there's a great need as we end the program for parental support, guidance, and training for youngsters. This will make a better community, right?
That has been our assignment that we believe God has assigned our hands to do, and I think we've done a good job. There's still more to do, and we have to be at the table to get the job done, and that's why we decided to run for this seat, because it puts us at the table in a much stronger capacity to bring some much-needed resources back home to the 61st District. And with that, Dr. Brooks, it's always a pleasure to talk with you, share my thoughts with you, and Godspeed for having us.
Mr. Al Rogers, thank you very much. And again, thank you for the producer, Clyde McEmore. We thank you very much for making this possible. Ladies and gentlemen, again, we're talking with Al Rogers, recently announced his candidacy, a Democratic candidacy for the 61st District State Representative, and he is a person that you should know. Thank you very much. for listening to another awareness session on Community Focus. My name is Dr. Waddell Brooks Sr., your host.